So it fell to me to kind of join the work that Carl Olof has described for us, join that up with the Bridging the Gap project. And as I mentioned earlier, I was involved in helping to write the project application, but I can say that, if I can use the word, it had a long gestation period, a bit like an elephant, or even longer actually, and it had several forms in its development. But certainly I think the vision behind a project of this kind is how we can get the landscape back to how it once was, and if not across a huge area, at least in our protected sites, which can be the stepping stones for a bigger picture in the broader landscape. And I took this picture here. I was very fortunate to be in Romania very recently, and that's a country whereby we still have these connected landscapes where you have everything within close proximity of one another. Within 500 meters you can see a small woodland area that's quite shady next to a small river valley with huge old open-grown oaks next to hawthorns in flower and with unimproved grassland. It's the kind of place where I'm thinking, you can just dig a little hole for me here somewhere, or chuck me inside one of the hollow oak trees. That would be fine. I would be happy to contribute to the wood mould development. But obviously, you know, we know in Northern Europe and in Eastern Europe that we've used our landscapes. We've benefited economically from the development of forestry and agriculture. And Romania is on that journey as well. And it's very difficult to go and visit those places and say, don't do it. Because of course, you know, who are we to say not to? But I think I love this photograph because for me it kind of illustrates one of the major problems that we have in Northern Europe. You know, that we've got these, we luckily still have many of those fantastic old oak trees. This is actually from England, I've got it here for the Queen actually, because she's her 70th Jubilee this week. So I kind of felt like I need, even if I'm not much of a royalist, this is one of her oak trees. She's actually not as old as this tree. She's only 96. And this one is probably 1,200 years old, roughly speaking. And who cares? When you get up at that age, whether it's 1,100 or 1,200, who cares? But, you know, the generation gap is pretty obvious to see there. We have the very old ones and not an awful lot in between. But I'm an inherent optimist, and I think that one of the things that's great about Bridging the Gap is we're working at both ends of that spectrum and in the middle. So the work to look after the old trees, to get them in the best possible condition so that they can live another 500 years with or without our help. But then also ensure that we've got the next generation ready to take over. But of course, as Carl Olof Bergman mentions, this thing about delivery time, 300, 400, 500 years, we can go to Mars and have a bloody robot taking photographs and samples of the rock, yet we can't produce a 500-year-old tree without waiting 500 years. But we can do things like clear around them, and it's not just in Östergötland that this is a problem. It's in Spain, it's in Estonia, it's in the UK. Pretty much everywhere we go where we have old trees, they're often on marginal lands that are no longer grazed or have been abandoned. So it's actually also one of the easiest things we can do in the scheme of things, clearing around and making the conditions right for our old trees. So, you know, if we can't do anything else, that's a great strategy. And then, of course, we have these fantastic... Oh, it's time to do our exercises again. Is that what it is, Carina? Yeah, okay. Maybe we should do a bit of tree yoga. These are one of our most valuable tools to help us after restoration. It's not always possible, but it's great if we can get the grazing animals back in the landscape as well, because they do the job for us once we've got the clearing work done. And that's another major strand in the Bridging the Gap project, was the clearing around the trees, getting the grazing back, or at least the management back, so that the trees will maintain open, planting trees. But then there's this bit in the middle, and that's really where the name came from, wasn't it? The Bridging the Gap between those very old trees and the next generation. And this is where some of the creative work that you'll be hearing about this afternoon has been done, and there's lots of interesting results which you'll hear about over the course of the rest of today, and also we'll see some of it when we go out to Tenere and Veteranised tomorrow. So I'm going to pass over to Carina, who can tell you the really good stuff.
Yes, and it's me again, Carina Greiff, and I'm project manager for this Life Bridging the Gap. And I don't know where to put my hands. Like this, yes. And I'm just gonna tell you a bit about this project, and then there'll be other people who will talk more about it. As Vikki said, I would say the most important thing in the project, or maybe the biggest action at least, is just this restoration, to clear around the trees and to get the grazing animals here if they weren't there from the beginning. Sorry. And if we will get the grazing animals there, you have to put up fences and maybe see that they have water. So in the project we have done about over 56 kilometers fencing is done so far. And of course, to get the grazing animals here is very important. When we do this restoration, we have discussed different. What are the visions? What do we want? What do we want to see for a landscape? And for one thing, we can think about the land use history. How dense is the vegetation? And we have talked about to get variation. How will we do this restoration just here on this place? And I will say, as you can see, I know that Lotta, she knows where we are. Halltorps hage, Öland. This was a very dense place when she started to restaurate. It was, you couldn't walk here. You couldn't crawl here, I would say, on the ground either. And now it's a meadow. It will be a better meadow in a few years, but it's quite nice already now. And I will just I will say that Lotta, she will recognize. You can also, it could be like this. You have it was very dense before, and now you have tried to just clear a little around the oldest trees. But of course, here we want to clear some more after a few years. And it could look like this. Here it was also very dense. You couldn't see, I would say, not any grass on the ground. But after restoration, it looks like this, and there are flowers in the springtime. I would say many orchids and things like this. And these are different visions for different areas. And we have discussed this a lot in the project, that it's not the same vision for every area. And I go to quite another thing here. We have, as Vikki said, we have been planting trees and bushes. It's over 900 trees, and then I would say they are like this high or something like that, and over almost 22,000 bushes and small trees to get a new generation. And we have done it in different methods, as you can see. This one is one quite big oak planted, and with the bushes around. And then we have to put up fences so they will be alive for the grazing animals. And we have used Swedish plant materials as far as possible, and we have picked acorns ourselves also. And there have been different methods in different places and from different partners. So it has been a variation there. And you will see, I will not talk so much, we will not talk about it much today, but we will see it and we will look at it tomorrow, both at Veteranised and Tinra. And I will just say, because this is my first life project, haven't been in this before, and some lessons learned. It's hard to get the right budget. You know that. If you have written an application, it's very hard. And especially when you have these new actions, you haven't done it before. So that's very hard. It can be totally wrong sometimes. That's it. But you have to do the best of it. We have had many discussions and many problems, I would say, or we have discussed this with procurement. And to get it's hard to find good contractors to get the right ones. So that's the thing we have tried to get right. One thing is, Vikki will talk about it later, about veteranization, and one thing about that is that one good thing about that we did was we started with an education for the arborists. And we think that was a good thing because before we started this project there was not so much veteranization done, so there was not so many arborists who has done this, not so much. So we started with education and that we learned. It was good, but we should have had a new education for after, I would say, 3 years or so, because arborists, they go to different, I don't know what you say, companies to different companies. So we should have had one after a few years. One thing we have discussed is also this subsidies to the pastures, and we are working with many trees in these habitats. So that's the thing. It's hard to get it. When we are done with the restoration, we want them to get the subsidies, and that could be hard. And we have discussed this a lot, and we will carry on with it, I guess, because we haven't solved that problem. But that's a thing we have to talk about more. And just one thing I would say is also, if you have if you have just started a project or so, it's good to have a plan. If you get money, if you have money left, have some ideas ready to get rid of them. I would say, do some good things. It's just an example. This is Hästernäs. Sorry, and this is you don't have to know exactly what action it is, but here is, you can see, here is where we plan to work and where we did things, and a little. No, oh,
Point for you.
Oh, yes, you can see, yeah, that's where we have planned to do things, and here. And for different kind of reasons, we saw that we would do some more things. And this is where we have worked in the project. So you have done things in a much bigger area and much more things. So that's just, you don't have to know exactly what we did. But this was a good, also just an example. What we have seen is that it's a big interest for the new actions. You know, like they will talk about it here later, Niklas and Claude, about the wood mould boxes and the stag beetle habitat piles. They are not new, but we have had a big interest. So many questions, and we have sent drawings of these to other country boards, to municipalities, to golf courses, and to some of you maybe to other countries as well. And when you have so much interest in some actions, it's very easy and encouraging to work with this action that many are interested in. I have just one more slide. One here. Why should you have a life project? I know there are many life projects here, and this is my first project, and what have I learned? To have this kind of project, a big project like this, it's a good way to get things done. You have milestones, and you have reports, and you have clearly deadlines. So you, as I said, you get things done. You focus around an issue, and you have clear goals. So that's one thing to. You can also, as we have worked here with some new actions, you have. You learn, and for maybe some things are common for one and new for another. And I would say one of the best thing is you get new colleagues. That's a good thing. I think that's fun. Both in the project, as we work now in southeast Sweden, you get new colleagues in other country boards and the municipality, but also from other countries. And I would say that's a very nice thing. Yes, that's all from me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carina.